That is called, in archaeology terms, Proto-Ionic Phoenician capital. So capital, you guys know, it sits on top of a column or a pole of some sort. Okay? Proto-Ionic means it dates back to the time period of about 3,000 years ago. We're talking about the time of David. Not only that, we find capitals like this all over the country, only in palaces. So if we find a capital like that here, that dates back to 3,000 years ago, maybe this is the palace. What's the only problem with the name of that capital? Is that it's Phoenician. You guys ever heard of Phoenicia? Phoenicia is Tyre.
Yeah.
It's the same people that come from Greece. It's the Lebanese border. It's Tyre, it's Sidon. It's really far away. So if the Phoenicians are here 3,000 years ago building palaces, then who's probably not here? David. But she says, well, you clearly don't know your scripture. Because if you open up to the same spot, Samuel 2, chapter 5.
Get ready, y'all. Get your cameras ready.
Chapter 5.
Sheesh.
Passage 11. The first thing that David does when he gets to Jerusalem and creates, he builds his palace. And what does it say? וישלח חירה מלך צור מלאכים אל דוד והצארזים וחורשי עץ וחורשי אבן קיר ויבנו בית לדוד. Practice this at home, those of you who are recording. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent envoys to David and cedar trees and carpenters and stonemasons, and they built a house for David. Who builds David's palace? The Phoenicians. It's ancient politics, simple as that. New king, the Phoenician king's like, hey, new king in the neighborhood, let's send him a palace. He'll owe me one later. We'll be friends. There you go. Politics, one of the most ancient professions. So I want y'all to all look this way, okay?
Man, what? I'm already.
I wanna. Okay, I want you to see where I'm standing over here. Okay, everybody see how I'm standing on a wall?
Right.
This is the beginning of the wall, one side. The other side, y'all see how wide this is? Look how thick this wall is. It goes all the way that way, it goes all the way that way. On the other side of where I am, so I don't get yelled at. On the other side of where I am is a really large fortification wall that's holding up whatever stood up here. We're talking about a massive wall. Think about your homes and how thick your walls are, and then look at this. So does that mean this is a palace? Not necessarily. The next thing she finds is pretty crazy. She finds it right over there, and it's this. I'm gonna pass it around. Anybody know how to read Hebrew? No, okay. Well, you're gonna look at this. It's made of clay. What do you think it is?
A coin?
It's not a coin because it's made of clay. And if clay is money, we would have like really big problems. Seal, you got it. What would happen back then? Let's just say I'm King Hezekiah, David's great-great-great-great-grandson, and I want to send a message to the people up north. And I want them, it's going to be a kingly decree. What am I going to do as the king? I'm going to write down the message on a scroll. I'm going to roll up the scroll. I'm going to tie it with a knot. On that knot, I'm going to put wet clay, and then I have my ring, and it says Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. I'm going to stamp it. It's going to dry. The only way to open this message is to break the seal, untie the knot, and open the message, which means that the people know that when they get a message with a seal and it hasn't been opened, then no one has changed it. It's actually from the king. Now, the only people who would have signet rings back then were kings, judges, advisors of the kings, scribes, really, really important people. So when she finds this, I'll tell you, she's actually already found, before she finds this, she finds a little over 100 just up here. In fact, most tour guides don't even know that because most of them, we don't actually know what they mean. They're literally sitting in the basement of the Ministry of Antiquities and no one knows what they are. But this is the first one that she finds and she goes, oh my God, I know this name. It's from this book. And she goes to the world and she says, y'all ready for it? Ready for the name? Brace yourselves. Gedaliah, son of Pashur. Anyone heard of that name? Some of y'all are like, I should say I know this name, but no, I've really never had any groups that know this name. It's okay. Not many people know him because he's not a popular name in the Bible, but he's important. Fine. She says, this is it. This must be the palace. We're done here. But the skeptics start saying, well, Eilat, how do you know it's the same guy? Maybe 2,700 years ago, the name Gedaliah and the name Pashur were like John and Mike. Maybe they were like the most popular names out there, and maybe it's a totally different man. She says, touche, maybe you're right. She keeps digging. A week later, about a yard away from this one, she finds another seal. And another seal with a name that she knows, and she goes, this is it. These are these people, 100%. This is the palace. We're done. What's the name? Ready? Juchal, son of Shelmi. Anyone heard of Juchal, son of Shelmi? No, it's cool. Everybody heard of Jeremiah? Yeah. Prophet Jeremiah, right? Prophet Jeremiah, some people say he was actually 13 years old. The prophet Jeremiah is not one that you would want to meet just in the street. Because over 90% of his prophecies are about how everyone's going to die, the city's going to burn, it's all over. No one wanted to listen to him, but he was saying over and over, we're evil, we're worshiping idols, we're not just, Jerusalem's a holy city, it's going to burn, repent, etc. No one's listening to him. One day they wake up and they see that the Babylonian army is literally charging on Jerusalem. And they start thinking, wait a minute, maybe the prophet's right, but it's too late. They didn't listen to him. So what does he do? He comes to the palace, maybe where you're standing right now. He comes to the palace and he says to the king, this is the last king from the tribe of Judah, from the house of Judah, from the house of David, King Hezekiah. He says to Hezekiah, the king Hezekiah, and next to all of his officers, he says, Hezekiah, you didn't listen. The city is going to burn. There's nothing that you can do to save this city. But you can save the people. If you surrender to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonians, if you surrender and don't fight, then they'll take the people, we'll be slaves, but we'll come back eventually. We'll rebuild Jerusalem. But if you try and fight, the last thing that you see before you die are your children and your people and your city burning. Now, let's phase out a minute. What do y'all think happens to somebody who publicly threatens the king 2,700 years ago?
Oh yeah, you get it.
Yeah, now you like your freedom of speech. Well, that was it. So what do these names have to do with it? Why are they so important? Why is she so sure that they're the same people and not just random people that happen to be here? Both of these names, first of all, they're both from this book, which is already insane. But not only are they from here, they're from the same book, they're from Jeremiah, they're both from Jeremiah. And not only are both of these names from Jeremiah, but they're from the same chapter in Jeremiah, chapter 38. And not only are these names from the same book, from the same chapter, they're from the same passage, passage 1. And not only are they from the same book, the same chapter, the same passage, but they're back to back in that passage. What does it say? Chapter 38, passage 1, and they heard. I'm just going to read the names. Shphatiah, son of Matan. Thank you. Gedaliah, son of Pashur, and Juchal, son of Shelmiah. Ding, ding, ding. And Pashur, son of Milkiah, the words that Jeremiah spoke. I'm not going to read to you what he said because I already told you. But if I skip ahead, what do they say after that? And the officer said to the king, let this man be put to death. Because he's weakening the morals of the soldiers who have to fight in the city. Imagine you're a soldier and you're hearing the prophet say, if you fight, you're all going to die. But if you surrender, we'll all live. You're not going to be running out to the battlefield. What does the king say? Vayomer hamelech Tzidkiyahu, hinehu biyadchem ki en hamelech yuchal etchem davar. And King Hezekiah says, behold, he's in your hands, for the king cannot oppose you. These aren't just officers. These are the right-hand advisors of the king, and not just any king, a king from the house of David, and not just in any place, in a place where maybe was the palace of David, and not just at any time, but they're found at the right time, right place, right names. There are archaeologists that say, no, maybe it wasn't David's palace, because the findings that we find are a little bit after David. They're his great-great-great-great-grandchildren. But then maybe she would ask you, well, when you switch the president, do you switch the White House? No, you don't. The first one builds it, and everyone else just renovates. That's it. The most important seal that we've ever found in the history of digging was also found by Eilat Mazar. This is the seal. It was much smaller than this. But it says on it in ancient Hebrew, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. This is the seal of a king, a very well-known king. And we find it in the diggings of the city of David a little bit north of here. If y'all were to come here up until 1994, and you would have said, our tour group, they're taking us to the city of David. There would have been a whole group of academic scholars called the Copenhagen scholars that would have said, wait, like the city of David, like King David from the Bible? And you would have been like, yes. And they would have said, well, you know he never existed. And you would have been like, it's a bestseller. He's like one of the main characters. Of course he existed. Billions of people all across the world believe in this. And they would have said, well, prove it. Prove that David existed without using that book. And you couldn't. Until 1994, one bright morning, all the way up at the Lebanese border of Israel, they find this. This little piece of clay that has writing in it. And it's written by a king named Hazael, who was an Aramean king. And what did he do? He writes that he was really happy that day because he defeated a king from Beit David, the house of David. And if there's a house of David, then there's a David. And in 1 second, science proves that David exists. And that's what happens here. There are people of faith. Y'all all, I assume, because the title of this tour was like Christian hip-hop people. That's what I get. When I get the tour, it's like Christian hip-hop stars. Christians. And I say, okay, y'all all believe in this book, right? Do you need me to prove things for you to believe in it? No, you believe in it. That's it. If I prove things, you're like, wow, that's awesome, but you believe in it already. And billions of people around the world believe in it too. But then there are the people who don't. And they say, no, I believe in things that are proven scientifically. This is a place where science and faith meet. Where suddenly I can hold a seal of a king written in this book, and it's not just a person in a story. He existed, and he existed here. And I can open up Psalms and see what they were talking about. And I can find walls and artifacts from people that we believe in. And suddenly this is a place that's so important because you can come with your faith and you come with your facts, and this is a place where they meet. Because everything that we've been finding, not only does it not go against the Bible, but actually it corroborates the biblical story. 150 years of digging, 9.5 acres, that's not a lot, it's very small. We've dug up less than 20% that there is to dig. That means that our great-great-grandchildren are still going to be uncovering the stories of ancient Jerusalem. That also means that if once the questions were, well, does David actually exist? Yes, he does. Science has proved it. And now the questions will be, well, okay, was his kingdom as big as it is in the Bible? Where was it exactly? Those are questions that all of the science is going in a very, very clear direction that's actually with the story and not against, which means that 20%, we still have another 80% to dig up and a lot more things to discover.